It's kind of like when you're raising capital, you get that market feedback of what the market thinks about your deal. Oh, well, that's too long of a timeline. I don't like that my money's tied up for 8 years, or I don't really like that area. It's not a big enough metro market, or I don't think that the cash flow is there with the rental rates. Like, I don't think the value adds there, or whatever the market's telling you.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yonah Weiss. On this journey we like to call a podcast. On board today, we got another awesome guest, Jennings Smith. You may have heard his cousin, Yaden, who was on the show a few weeks ago. If you like that, definitely you're going to love this, because these two, you've maybe heard him referenced a few times during that episode with Yaden, but they're doing amazing things, and just excited to have you here on the show. Jennings, how you doing?
What's up, Yonah? I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on the show, and it's super fun to be here and chat and swap stories.
I'm excited equally to have you on the show. And what you and Jennings have accomplished over the past few years is truly inspiring. For those of you who don't know and didn't listen to that episode and are all fresh and like, wow, Jennings Smith, I love that name. What has he got to offer? He is the co-founder of Live Oaks Rental Properties. So they are a multifamily investment company. You guys do a bunch of other things as well besides multifamily, but have grown that portfolio over the past few years to over 1,500 units. It's just incredible to see. And I'm just excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, man. It's been a pretty awesome journey. Yeah, we're 500 self-storage units, around 1,000 apartment units. And then Yaden and I, between the two of us, we own about half of that, because we have partners and we've syndicated some of that stuff. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I just decided, hey, I've got to build some assets and net worth, and I can't just keep on. I was in construction before that, so I just can't keep on trading time for money, and I gotta get my life on track with building some passive income and having some money when I'm 60 and I'm just broke.
Yeah, totally. And you've built some other things along the way, right? I mean, one thing that I know of is you've built this incredible community, the My First Million in Multifamily Facebook group, which I'm a part of. Very active group. If anyone's interested in learning about multifamily or getting involved in multifamily or getting into the other thing that you've built, which is the Deal Room, a kind of mentorship and mastermind group there that you guys have brought together. Definitely check that out, guys. I would highly recommend anyone who's listening to this to check out the My First Million in Multifamily Facebook group. But you've done some other things as well. I mean, I've definitely dabbled, seen some of your posts and seen some of the things you've been, some side businesses, some Amazon, some crypto. I'm just curious, what sounds like you got your hands in a lot of different things.
Well, it's funny because I think something that held me back was this identity crisis of I'm a builder, right? I'm a home builder. I'm a renovator. Everyone in my town knew me as that. My parents, my spouse, and just how hard it was for me to shift that and to say, I'm going to do something different. And getting into real estate was eye-opening. And I don't want to do the same thing that I did, right? I don't want to be, oh, he's the multifamily guy or he's the apartment guy. I think that's fine for some people and their personality. There's nothing wrong with that. But I have kind of been thinking about this a lot lately, and I view myself as I'm an investor. So I'm always looking for investments, and that can be investments in my team, in my family, my wife, my children, investments in business, investments in relationship capital with other people. I'm starting another business right now with 3 other people that, has nothing to do with multifamily. And we just launched a cryptocurrency for the deal token. So
very cool.
I want to stay agile with that, but always be putting out my time, energy, resources, and money, and hopefully growing it so that I can bless other people and benefit other people. But yeah, I want to be an investor, and I also got to stay focused. We got to be careful not to go in too many directions at once.
No, but it's important to make sure that you have a lot of options there. And I totally relate with that. that feeling of kind of being boxed in, and people think of you as this thing or this person or that type of person. Whereas, everyone is complex individuals, and it doesn't matter if we're doing multiple things necessarily, but we're not necessarily just this thing or that guy or that girl who's doing that thing. But oftentimes we get defined by our job and by our, who we are. People think, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a multifamily investor. We're really, we're people and multifaceted. And so we're family people. We're people who, love relationships, love our kids. And so that should come out, especially if we're religious people. We love God. We love, the community. And these things all should come out and be able to be related. Oh, Yona or Jennings, he's that guy that, just a great guy. He's someone that is, he pays attention to detail. I don't know. He's a very successful person, right? Or he's an entrepreneur, which can really mean so many different things. And I think when you kind of limit yourself, you step on that, different, or you close doors to opportunities really when they come about. So that's how I see things. Try to be open when opportunities present themselves and see where they go.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the multifamily group, a lot of times things evolve that you don't even know are going to be there, right? I started that Facebook group initially just to try to attract deal flow and attract capital, right? I was trying to attract money. And eventually we had kind of more of that than we needed, right? It was a lot of people wanting to invest and a lot of deals at the time, right? When the market was not as expensive. But it kind of dawned on me that, hey, a lot of people can't just take a course and close multifamily, right? They need a community, they need a network. And so that led me to build the deal room and plug in and connect with people. And now it's honestly, it's a big part of my life, a really big part of my life, and a really cool business that Yaden and I have built. And it really wasn't even meant to be. Like, it was just kind of an accident that evolved out of something that we were doing for a totally different purpose. So I think being open to that opportunity versus, oh, well, I don't want to be a guru, or I'm not going to sell education or whatever, which I definitely felt that way. But to understand, hey, this could be bigger than me. Like, you could really change people's lives. You could really help people get out of the rat race, unlock their life, and do something that is going to pay massive dividends for them and their kids and their communities. Because there's a lot of people that are struggling. They're unhappy. They're just doing their job or their career because they feel like they don't have any other options and there's nothing else to do. And it's not really what they want to do. And it's not what God put them on this earth to do, probably. But they feel stuck. And so once I started to frame it that way of, hey, I've got something that for the right person could really help them. And it would be wrong to sandbag, right? And to not try and not get uncomfortable, not put myself out there and build something that maybe could help people.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. And it probably came a lot just from listening to the community. Like you said, you started this group and people were probably asking all kinds of questions. And by doing the live things that you do every week, right? The Facebook Lives where you're getting on, bringing a guest, or just talking about different things, I'm sure you get a lot of interested people. How can we learn more? How can we, why don't we do this more often? Things like that. It just kind of opens up the opportunity.
Exactly. And then it was like a necessity, right? Because I can't sit there and talk to you for 10 hours straight about the basics of how to do a deal. But if I recorded it, then that could help you. And then was almost born out of frustration because a lot of people would connect with me and I'd jump on the phone and I'd have a call and I'd pour my heart out on what they needed to do or what would help them. And they'd be like, oh, that's great. And then they would do nothing, and they would call me a month later and they wouldn't have done the first thing I told them to do. And so I realized, okay, to really help people, you've got to have a barrier to entry. You've got to know these people are serious. They're going to dedicate time and effort. And one of the requirements we have is you need to already own multifamily or own a business or have some experience in that regard so that I know that you're probably going to succeed. You know how to get things done. Because there's a large demographic of people that talk, but they really never achieve. And so they don't do the work. And I don't want that in my group, pretty much.
No, it's important to have like-minded people, but you're absolutely right. If a person is serious, first of all, there's a monetary commitment that makes it more serious, where you have to actually pay to be part of this group, pay to be part of this club. And for a lot of people, that's a motivation, right? You're spending hard-earned money. You're not just going to waste it and throw it out. For most people, that's not the case. But for other people, you have to know that they are willing to do the work that it takes to do that. I mean, it's not easy. It's not passive. No real estate investing is passive. Even if you are, just investing passively like an LP, that's not so passive sometimes. You got to do some work. You got to do some due diligence. You got to find out who these sponsors are. What's the deal really like, et cetera. But once you want to get into a real deal and be a asset manager or be involved in the capital raising or whatever it is, there's a lot of work. You need a little bit of a track record to do that. So I totally relate. I totally get that. Have you found any challenges in doing that, in creating this group and running it?
Well, I'll say, we get better as we do stuff. And the only way to get better is to do something not so good. And I'm sure if you go back and listen to your first podcast episodes, they weren't as good as they are now.
Right.
And they'll be better in the future, hopefully. And so you'll get better guests than me. But
you're already the future. You're the better guest already.
When we started, I would say it wasn't super structured, right? We did a live underwriting call, and we gave you some tools, and that was pretty much it. And it was cool and it worked for some people, but it did not have the effect that I wanted it to, where we were really getting people to hit it out of the park. And so over time, what we did was, one, we elevated the standard of the people that could get in. And then two, we implemented these deal sprints. And so you got assigned to an accountability partner of sorts. So yeah, just two people together, maybe three. And over 6-8 weeks, you would lay out a goal and work towards that goal. And that worked better, but it still wasn't great. And because a lot of times one or the other partner would flake out, and then the little accountability group would die. And so the next evolution was larger groups of 6 to 8, maybe 10 people, so that if a few flaked out, there was still the nucleus there. And then the latest iteration is with a sprint leader. So we have a designated leader for each group. You're in a group of 8 to 10 people you can network with. And we have a live leaderboard of like, how many letters of intent have you submitted? How many deals have you underwritten? How many offers, have you gotten accepted, gone under contract? How much soft commitment of capital have you raised? And it gets updated every 5 minutes. And So over the course of 6 weeks, if you hit certain metrics, you get prizes, gear and hats, and then the top winners get cash prizes. And it's incentivized that competition, accountability, networking, really getting to know 8 to 10 people every 6 weeks. And I mean, the results have just gone through the roof. I'm posting multiple deals every week that are going under contract out of the deal room, which is, it's awesome. And, people pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for mentorship programs that don't achieve the results that we get. So I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that.
That's incredible. And it's something, like you said, that kind of grew out of the community and has taken on many iterations. Who knows what the next stage is going to be, but it sounds like if you've come this far, you're certainly going to go further, because you're going to have more demand. That's for sure. When people start to see, and others, right, and they tell their friends or they tell other people what this is about and how successful, things have been accomplished through this platform, it's going to grow. I guarantee you. I can't imagine not.
It is. And we limit it to 15 people a month, and it sells out every month. And it's already, the demand is outstripping, because I don't want to grow it too big and lose what I have. So, but the people will tell you what they want. It's kind of like when you're raising capital, you get that market feedback of what the market thinks about your deal. Oh, well, that's too long of a timeline. I don't like that my money's tied up for 8 years, or I don't really like that area. It's not a big enough metro market, or I don't think that the cash flow is there with the rental rates. Like, I don't think the value adds there, or whatever the market's telling you. And some people, everyone has their own opinions, but if you tailor it to what the market wants and you have that right product fit, it's going to do well. And that's sort of how I've felt with my deals. Is I want to close really, really good deals so that it's pretty easy to raise that money. I can just talk to some people and they're like, oh yeah, That's a no-brainer. That sounds great. And I don't want to try and give away as little as possible. I'm more looking for like, what are the deals where it's like, I can give away just an undeniably good offer and fill up that deal, oversubscribe quickly and move on. Because it does suck to struggle with a capital raise, as you know, I'm sure.
Of course, it's always a struggle, but if the more deals, the more good deals you have, and the more relationships you build, and the more trust you get from the investors by just seeing the results, that's really, the results are going to speak more, for themselves than anything else along the way.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about that accountability group, and you're saying, have some people that maybe were flaking out a little. What do you think, can prevent that? If someone's coming to join up and wanting to be a part of a group and wanting to make something happen, is it just people's lives getting in the way, time, or they're just not committed? Like, how would you recommend people kind of to be committed and to, be accountable?
So I think a lot of it was a poor framework. People, especially when they're on a new frontier, they're learning something a little scary, they want to be led. And so if we can lead in a better like say, okay, here's the designated leader. He or she is going to pick the time that we're going to meet. They're going to pick, okay, everybody jump on this Zoom call at Tuesday. We're like, does that work for everybody? Yes. Okay. And setting that up, just the mechanics of it really helped people to engage and take away that friction, right? So that's all we're trying to do is just take away friction to make it as easy as possible for people to do the things that they say that they want to do, right? To keep the promises to themselves. And so for me, when I'm leading up my sprint group, I'll just say, what's the one thing that you can commit to that you're going to do this week that you can keep that promise to yourself? Because don't tell me you're going to underwrite 5 deals and you're going to make 3 offers and you're going to connect with 2 new brokers and you're going to raise $1 million. Like, just tell me, I'm going to send out 2 letters of intent. I'm going to send out 2 offers. I can do that, or I'm going to underwrite 1 deal, or I'm going to call 1 broker, or I'm going to write down my list of people in my phone that might be interested in investing. I'm just going to do that. And building on that momentum of, I'm a person that keeps promises to myself. If I tell myself I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I tell myself I'm going to create a podcast and consistently produce it every week, I'm going to do it. And over time, it becomes a habit and it becomes easy. But in the beginning, it's really easy to break that promise. And I tried doing a podcast for a while and it just didn't work out. And, I quit after 10 episodes, so that is, I think, the biggest thing. And then setting the expectation of, this is a 6-week sprint. I need you to show up every week. If you can't, then put it in the chat, like your update for the week. But if you can't commit to being here every time and you're not going to let us know, then you need to drop out and do the next sprint. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to judge you, because we all get busy and there's times of our life where it just doesn't work out. But keeping the promises, right? You sign up, you said you want to do the sprint. I need you to do the sprint for your sake, so that you're keeping the promise to yourself and you're building confidence versus, this is another thing I said I was going to do and I flaked out on it.
You're absolutely right. So a lot of it's about building habits too. Like you said, doing things that are difficult, that's how you're going to grow, and it's going to take time to set in. But if you make that mental commitment and you have that mindset that you want to grow, you want to do this thing, I think that's really where it starts, right? It's in the mind. You have to make that mental commitment and then just keep the promises to yourself. Like you said, taking on too much is never a good idea, right? Taking on too many things at once is never a good idea. But if you can commit to one small thing, you're likely going to do more, because that one small thing may seem like a mountain right now, but once you conquer it, it's like a molehill. It really is. And it's a lot of it's in our head. That's really good advice.
You hit the nail on the head with the wanting it, because everybody will say they want the result, right? I want to have 1,000 units. I want to have a podcast with hundreds of thousands of downloads every week. I want to have passive income of, $100,000 a month, whatever you want, but they really don't, like
there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect.
Your actions and your habits are an unflinching mirror. Like your results are an unflinching mirror of you. And so if you want that, and then you see, whoa, I'm going to have to call that many investors. I'm going to have to call that many brokers. I'm going to have to do this and network and invest this money and travel these conferences and all this stuff I've got to do. You know what? Netflix on the couch looks pretty good, right? I don't really want that. I'm going to be good with making $70,000 a year, getting by. I don't want that. But I think that they're misjudging the cost of that long term. of sacrificing their time because they're not going to ever have time freedom, money freedom. Let me pick up and go on vacation with the family. Let me help my son or daughter start a business. Let me bail out my parents because they ran out of money in retirement and I got to be there to help them and I can stand in the gap and do that. That's the cost that's going to be there. The cost of being comfortable for the first 20, 30 years and not getting out there and doing whatever it takes to achieve those goals.
Love that. And you're absolutely right. Everyone's goals are different, but the foundation is the same. The principles are the same. And if you want to have that success, whatever it is that you define in your mind as that, you have to commit. You have to really commit to making a difference and changing and getting out of the, if you're in the rat race, getting out of that. If you're in, a place where you don't want to be, where you're not going to be able to commit to those goals or get to them from where you are now, you got to change. You got to move. You got to get out of where you are. Maybe it's your environment. Maybe it's the people that are around you that are giving you negative feedback and, saying, oh, I have this goal. I want to do this. And other people saying, no, well, you really can't do that. There's so much that we can learn from, from this episode, people like you who are making that difference and, telling other people, teaching other people, this can be done. I think it's pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
I want to transition to now what we call the final four, Jennings. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question to you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I would say the worst job I ever had was of my own creation, owning my own small construction company. And I was able to change that. But for many, many years, I was the crew leader. I was laboring alongside, we would build houses ground up, framing them. We would do renovations and we're doing everything we possibly could and only subbing out the things that we just didn't know how to do, like the HVAC or electrical or something. And crawl spaces. I spent a lot of time in crawl spaces, under damp, gross houses, moldy in the heat in South Carolina, insulation falling in your face. You're trying to tear out rotten beams and, lift houses up with jacks and dangerous, dirty, not fun. And beyond that, dealing with emotional homeowners, right? Where when you're building a spec home, if they don't like the product, they don't have to buy the product. But when I'm renovating your house or building a custom home on your land, if you don't like it, whether it's valid or not, I have to fix it, right? I'm kind of beholden to your opinion and scope of work. And a lot of times that's just not clearly defined, the budgets. And so it was something that I did end up getting a handle on it. I joined a franchise. They had a lot better processes and systems that helped me run that company much, much better. But for many, many years, it built grit in me. I made a decent living doing it and I don't regret it. It worked for me. But I would say, that was I definitely earned my money in those days.
You learn the hard way when you're running your own business, for sure. And especially when you're talking about that type of gritty work. I think contractors in general get a bad rap. Maybe for good reason, but a lot of them have a bad name out there. But it's a difficult business to keep on track.
Yeah. You're dealing with fluctuating prices and subcontractors and a demographic of people that can be difficult to deal with,
Right.
Because nobody aspires I'm going to be a sheetrock installer. I'm going to grow up to be, a landscape. I'm going to install sod. You're kind of getting entry level, or sometimes people that have made bad decisions. Right. What you're working with. So it's hard. It's a hard business.
I hear that. No, absolutely. Well, good for you for learning that and getting out while you could. Second question for you is, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
So I want to say one, because it really has. I've come back to it a lot with what I'm doing and with relationships with my kids, raising capital. Flip the Script by Oren Klaff. It's just a really good. He stitches all these stories together to illustrate points that are so effective with human psychology. And he has a deep understanding of how humans think, how our brain processes information, and how they're just you can wire thoughts and change people's opinions and make them think that your idea is their idea. Mm-hmm. And it was a really game-changing book for me. Really enjoyed that. Flip the Script by Oren Klaff. I would say Die with Zero as far as like a paradigm shift. Die with Zero, it goes against the American culture of you've got to amass millions and millions of dollars for retirement. And it really looked into the data behind that. And most of the time, we have way too much. And the utility of money is decreasing with every day that passes. So, and we know this instinctually, like if you had $5 million today versus $5 million when you're 75, it's a heck of a lot more valuable to you now. Right. I mean, I would even take $2 million, $1 million today than $5 million when I'm 75. I would, because I know what I could do with it and the lifestyle that I could create with that. And yet these people are, they're delaying doing the things that they want to do. They want to go to Europe. They want to go to Disney World with the kids. They want to buy that car that they've always wanted to, and they're not because of this fear of not having enough. And really, when you look at the data of what we spend and how retirement actually goes, it just isn't true. And so the premise of the book is die with zero, die at zero. And so whether that means spending it on things that is important to you or giving it away while you're still living, and you can see it, the benefit of it in the trust, charities, your children, grandchildren, however. And I think it was a really cool book on leaving a legacy versus, I've got this 401k with $10 million in it or whatever. And yet I was a penny pinching miser and I never, went anywhere because I was afraid.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's a huge mindset change. We'll definitely put both of those in the show notes for our guests, our listeners to check both those out. I highly encourage everyone to check both those books out. Third question to you, Jennings, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
So would this be
anything whatsoever?
Okay. You know what? I'm going to go a little personal with you. There's this sport and it's called paramotoring. So it's like a powered parachute. So if you've seen those guys like kite surfing, they have the wing, and it's essentially that. It's a wing, and you've got what looks like a big fan strapped to your back, and a fan with like kind of a seat. And these guys just like they run on a field, and as the fan pushes them forward, the wing creates lift, and you can fly. You can fly around, and if the fan dies or runs out of gas, you can still just kind of parachute down because you got a parachute on. And it looks awesome. I mean, even as a kid, I always thought it would be cool to do that. And so I broached this subject with my wife, and she was not a fan of this idea. Because
surprise.
I got 4 kids under the age of 10 and a wife, and I'm like, babe, I mean, I got life insurance. I mean, come on. But she does. She's like, when the kids are grown, you can do that. But that is a skill that I would like to do. So there's a school down in Florida. I can go for a 14-day training, get certified in it. Not like I've thought about this at all, but but yeah, that would be a skill or a talent that I would want to acquire, is learn how to become a paramotor pilot.
That's pretty cool. That is interesting. I've never heard of that. It sounds like something that most wives would be opposed to, but it's something that good for you. Gotta have some adventure in your life.
Yeah, she knew I was crazy when she married me, so
We're all crazy in our own way. So it's just about knowing that or not. Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
I would think that what I'm working through right now, success is living a disciplined life, living a disciplined life where I am keeping those promises to myself, and I can turn my mind towards any problem and I can achieve it. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to be weak. And as we grow, that's something that still remains challenging to me, is that mental power, right? I think that's everything, where you can train your brain, you can train your thoughts, you can reject the fear, you can audit those thoughts and generate a new emotion, whatever circumstance comes across you. So I feel like as I move closer to the mastery of that, complete, I don't know if that's even possible, but control of my thoughts and emotions around the circumstances and the ability to interpret them in the manner that I want to, versus my lizard brain or baser emotions saying, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world, sky's falling, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's something that we can remember right now. I mean, I don't know when your listeners will be listening to this, but it's July and the Fed's about to come out with another rate raise and everyone's scared about recession looming, and maybe recession will come, maybe it won't, and if it does, who knows how bad it will be or won't be. And so understanding that and retraining your brain around, well, what's good about a recession coming? What's good about a rate raise? What's good about inflation? And how can I rewrite the script and story around me? And so I have gotten better at that as I go through these cycles, because we always go through these cycles of circumstances that we interpret as bad or difficult or whatever, and flipping the script on those so that you can take the appropriate action and get the results that you want versus feeding into this fear and getting the results that you don't want.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's such an incredible perspective. I don't think people take enough time to even think that through and to understand how they are able to approach it, because we're bombarded all the time with what other people think and what the media and what the news and what our friends and, even social media. It's just, there's so much noise out there to really take the time, like you're saying, and to understand things on your own level, your own perspective, and really, dictate your life on that level. That's, it's really what we all need to do. So I appreciate that perspective, that definition. And finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you? We already mentioned the Facebook group, so we'll put that in the notes, but where else or how else?
Yeah, I'd love for them to, if they're into podcasts, listening to podcasts, unlock your life on all podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, all that. And then Instagram, my name, Jennings Foster Smith Jr. And I'm also on Facebook, Jennings Smith. But My First Million in Multifamily is a great place. And shoot me a DM. I respond. I try to engage with that, and happy to connect with you, help you, point you in the right direction. So don't be afraid to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to put that in the show notes. And I hope everyone takes you up on that suggestion and reaches out and you get bombarded in your inbox with all these amazing listeners to the Weiss Advice podcast. Thank you again for taking the time out today. It's been a pleasure. It's just great catching up and great to hear more of your backstory.
Yeah, Yona, thank you, man. And thanks for all the great work you've done on our properties with the cost seg studies. And I appreciate that, man. You saved me a lot of money on taxes.
That's my pleasure. And thank you guys, your listeners, for tuning in once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.